what is the difference between vagus nerve stimulation that Gabriel Health does as opposed to red light therapy?
So the first problem with red light therapy is that they're using red LEDs or red infrared, and that's fine for cosmetic type things. And so where I'm different is that you need to get better penetration. So what we use is near infrared, which is 850 nanometers.
Welcome back to the Primal Reset Podcast. Today, we're joined by Terry Cruz, the founder of Gabriel Health. Terry has a remarkable background in engineering and health innovation, from creating the world's first laptop to now building proactive at-home health systems that combine contactless monitoring, light therapy, and vagus nerve stimulation. He's been recognized as a healthcare leader to watch, with a vision to empower everyone, from kids to aging adults and veterans, to live healthier, independent lives. Terry, it is a pleasure to have you. Welcome to the show.
Welcome, Eliot, and thank you for the invitation.
Absolutely. I mean, your history is so unique and something that we don't see very often. So walk with me a quick 60 seconds. What is Gabriel Health? What got you into developing contactless monitoring with light therapy and vagus nerve stimulation?
I guess it culminated when I turned 70 and I made a promise to myself not to go into an aged care facility, but more importantly, not be a burden on my family. And so I embarked on an 8-year quest to find the technology to do that. And I might add that over that 8 years, we had many failures. And Eliot, as Edison used to say, every failure is one closer to the solution. We didn't need 10,000 attempts like he took for a light bulb, but 8 years of struggle and just persistence. And now we have a solution that will revolutionize home care.
So most people think that aging means decline. And what's the biggest lie that we've been told about getting older that Gabriel Health is proving wrong?
Well, here I am, a perfect example of the fallacy that people have put over the years. Many times in my career towards the latter years, I've been subject to ageism, as they call it. In fact, I had a presentation with a 26-year-old recent Harvard graduate venture capitalist in Silicon Valley. 5 minutes into the presentation, he goes, "Stop. Terry, you're too old. There's no point having a presentation." I said, "Son, before you were born, I invented the first laptop. Knowledge without wisdom is dangerous. Goodbye."
And what an interesting story, creating the first laptop. Not to go super into that and derail this conversation, but I know you shared with me a little stint of talking with Steve Jobs when he was first creating Apple. Do you mind recapturing that for everyone?
Yes, in 1983, we were exhibiting the laptop at Comdex in Las Vegas. My hero, not Steve Jobs, came up and said, "Why would anyone want to carry a computer around?" Because at that stage he had his Apple thing, which was a great monster that took up your whole desk. And fortunately for Jobs and Apple, it was mobility that saved their company.
What an awesome story. You don't hear it very often. I mean, you don't hear it at all. But to be part of what Apple is now and to have started it yourself and built the first laptop is astounding. Going back kind of into Gabriel Health and building that system that's able to monitor and treat everyone without them wearing anything, how close are we to living in a world where our homes heal us instead of hospitals?
Look, the problem with the medical industry at the moment is that they base everything upon treatment, and that's done for cash flow reasons, in that if everyone's healthy, they don't have a business. The doctors don't get to have appointments. Hospitals don't get to have patients, and pharmaceutical companies don't have people to peddle their poison to.
That's true. I mean, it's definitely a system that we can see in the future. If you had to give me a guesstimate, is this possible to see in a lifetime, or will it take 5 lifetimes? If you had to give me an educated guess as to will this be possible, and if so, how long?
Look, It can be relatively quick. And some of the things that we've seen in the early testing with the technology is that we change things sometimes overnight. In fact, we had a nurse of 15 years of very complex PTSD, and during COVID, she became burnt out and descended into very serious drug abuse. And fortunately, she's got herself out of the drug problem, but was still left with insomnia, anxiety, and PTSD, such that she couldn't work. Her life was miserable. She was tired. She slept all day, couldn't sleep at night, couldn't work, couldn't relate to her relatives, and probably on the verge of suicide. And so I gave her one of our systems, and she rang me the next morning and said, "I've just had 8 hours uninterrupted sleep. I've never had that before." Over the next 4 weeks, she continued to improve, and now she's back working full time and not a shadow of the past. And so, those sorts of results bode well for the future of care and prevention and being proactive, as opposed to this reactive, when you're sick, you go and see a doctor. Well, I'd like to keep you healthy so you never have to go and see a doctor.
Well, so share with us, what does this device look like, and how are you able to actually help cure someone without any contact to their body?
So that's the sensor, which is based upon radar. Over the years, I've wanted to get a system to detect what's known as ballistocardiogram data. Going way back, we had the classic argument, a bit like the beta and VHS videotape argument, and one was selected and probably not the best. And similarly, we had this same argument between ECG and BCG. And so ECG won because the technology wasn't good enough to deliver BCG data. The problem with ECG is that it sits there and looks at the input to the heart. It just records and says, hey, we've had an electric impulse delivered by the brain to pump. We don't know whether it pumped, and we don't know how well it pumped. BCG, on the other side, looks at the output of the heart. And so we can tell very distinctly that the spec of the heart. Now, as an engineer, I'm a bit crude about the heart. I just say it's a 2-stage electromechanical pump, a dumb pump. And as such, I can specify the state of that pump in real terms, not the mumbo-jumbo the cardiologists and all the others use to confuse us and keep us out of their game. I like to simplify things. And as an engineer, we go looking for the cause of a problem and fix the cause rather than patch it and treat it. And so having ballistocardiograph data, I'm not only able to see your breathing and your heart rates, but I'm able to very accurately define what your heart rate is. The problem with traditional methods, in other words, a nurse grabs your wrists and counts 10 pulses 6 pulses in 10 seconds, and she said, you've got a 60 heartbeat. If I had 11 pulses, I've got a 66 heartbeat. But if that 11th pulse was 200 beats, I don't see it. And so the same thing happens with the wearables. They're random numbers, they really are. The technology is fraught with inconsistency. 30% of the time you can't read a heartbeat. And when you do get heartbeats, what they do is they count how many heartbeats there are in a minute, average it out, and that becomes your heartbeat. That to me is a waste of time. So what we actually do is that we look at the time between each heartbeat and calculate a frequency for every single heartbeat. Now, we are the only organisation and the only bit of technology in the world that can do that. And having that accurate information, I'm then able to start looking at things like the percentage of time your body is in parasympathetic or sympathetic mode. And that becomes very important if you want to start treating someone, because if you're in sympathetic mode, the fear and flight, you are wearing your body out. And so I determine that sympathetic mode is wear. Parasympathetic, on the other hand, is when the body restores itself, and usually happens between midnight and dawn, when we get into REM sleep and things like that. And it's the time that our body repairs all of the damage we did during the day. Now, if we don't have more of the repair compared to the wear, we're going backwards. And so improving the length of time we have for for repair means that firstly, we're starting to fix the problems, and in time, we eliminate the problems. And so this is all controlled by something called the vagus nerve. And the vagus nerve is attached to every organ in your body. It has a direct link with the brain and each of the organs and determines the state of the body. It is the vagus nerve that puts our body into parasympathetic. And not only is it involved in getting us into the right state, it also controls the gut biome and its connection with the brain. And so you have this loop from the gut through the vagus nerve to the brain and then back to each of the organs via the vagus nerve. So it becomes a very important nerve in the system. And unfortunately, over the years, there's been thousands of research studies on the vagus nerve, PBM or photobiomodulation, and more commonly known as red light therapy and some of the other scams that are out there at the moment. The difficulty is that the vagus nerve does everything and can be stimulated. But unless you can see what effect your stimulation is having, it's a waste of time. And so for the first time, we've been able to see the results of the therapy. And by using some modern artificial intelligence, we've been able to develop a feedback loop that firstly, your vagus nerve activity. And what we've found is that every person has a different resonant frequency for their vagus nerve. And when we stimulated that frequency, we get a 40% increase in efficacy. The reason that we start to see incredible things happening is that by supercharging your repair, you can get some amazing results. The result with the nurse that I mentioned is pretty sensational. Personally, I've actually had one myself where on the back of my hand, I had what's known as an SCC cancer, which is a very aggressive form of cancer, and it was growing rapidly. It was 1/2 inch in diameter and 1/4 inch high. I was due to have it excised and a skin graft. My insurance company, in their wisdom, said that it was pre-existing, so they wouldn't cover it. So, as I'm a bit of a rebel, I went against medical history. Medical history said that if you stimulate cancers with either the vagus nerve or the carotid or your arteries, the blood, you'll make it grow faster. So I was taught at the age of 16, don't believe anything unless you can prove it yourself. And so, and I've lived my life that way. And so I decided to apply my treatment to my cancer. And within 7 weeks, there is no sign of that cancer. Not a mark, not a scar, nothing. And it's only the 5th time in medical history that an SCC has been totally regressed. And the other 4, they sort of assumed it might have been immune system or something, but didn't put much faith in it. I can categorically say it's the fact that I'd supercharged my immune system that it got rid of that cancer. So the thing you have to accept over the years of, I've had 63 years of inventing world first products. It's a very lonely position, and you live with the naysayers, and those naysayers can be very powerful people. Steve Jobs, for instance. And you've got to have a very thick hide, and you've got to be persistent and keep going until you achieve what you believe it will be. And I've led my life that way, and I will continue to do it. The one thing that I won't do is retire. I actually feel at this point in my career that I'm actually more creative now than I was in my 20s. And the good thing...
And more knowledgeable.
And I've got the knowledge now, so it actually happens quicker.
Definitely not built for everyone to be the first person to invent or be an innovator in any sense, but absolutely definitely have to have a thick hide, have a thick back and thick skin to be able to take all of the naysayers out there saying that it won't work or it doesn't work and it'll never become big. You've clearly proved a lot of them wrong, and I'm excited to see how much bigger Gabriel Health can get with this sort of treatment. Going to what you mentioned earlier with a lot of scams out there in the wellness community, mentioning red light therapy as one of them. What is the difference between vagus nerve stimulation that Gabriel Health does as opposed to red light therapy?
So the first problem with red light therapy is that they're using red LEDs or red infrared, and that's fine for cosmetic type things. The problem with the red light is that, it's in a bandwidth that technically 650 nanometers, and its ability to penetrate is probably less than a millimeter. Put something on your wrist that they claim stimulates the vagus nerve is beyond my comprehension. First problem they have is that there is no vagus nerve in the wrist. So if I can penetrate 1 millimeter at the wrist and there's no vagus nerve there, I'm certainly not stimulating the vagus nerve. So all of those treatments are probably 50% placebo effect, where if there's any noticed improvement, it'll be a placebo. You've got very little nerve and blood action in the wrist, like you're at the end of the system, at the periphery. And so where I'm different is that you need to get better penetration. So what we use is near infrared, which is 850 nanometers. And what I actually determined, 850 was the number that the industry actually said was the best. In my experimentation, being a precise engineer, I use 847.5 nanometers to get maximum effect. And so we can get penetration of 1 to 2 centimeters, which starts to mean something. The best place to find the vagus nerve is in fact here in the neck, where it's actually almost on the surface. But more importantly for us, it's contained within the carotid artery sheath. And we stimulate the vagus nerve, so we put the body into the right mode to be receptive for treatment. But because the carotid artery's there, our PBM, or photobiomodulation, works on the carotid artery such that it generates nitric oxide. So the nitric oxide in the blood then dilates the veins and arteries, which means you get more blood flow. And at the same time, we're activating the cells within the blood with a thing called ATP. And so what we get now is body's in perfect mode to receive therapy. We increase the amount of blood that's flowing, and that's particularly important for the brain. And not only are we increasing the blood flow, we are activating the cells within the blood, so we get more impact. And that's why we see every person I've given my technology to, one of two things happens. We confirm all of the chronic illnesses they have, or we find some that they don't know about. And it's those don't know abouts that are really dangerous. And I'll give you an example. Atrial fibrillation. Probably 60% of the population has what's known as AFib, and that leads to strokes. And what we're finding is that athletes, peak of their form, have died from heart attacks. A classic, AFib is an old person's disease. Bron's son, 19-year-old basketball player, had a heart attack from AFib at the age of 19. And so, professional athletes, 5 times more likely to have AFib and a stroke. Another really dangerous one is airline pilots. They are concerned that airline pilots are having heart attacks, even though they have very stringent 6-monthly medicals. And the reason they have heart attacks is that they've got AFib. And it's a silent killer. 9 times out of 10, you have no symptoms until it's too late and you end up with a stroke. And so, we have the ability to detect that before it becomes serious. And so what we will find is if we stick with some of the medical protocols of determining what someone has and all that, that's fine, and they get treated. And my view is that we don't need to know what's wrong with you, because the vagus nerve knows more precisely than we do. And so provided we give an environment where therapy can actually work, it's a proven fact. Unless the body is in repair mode, I don't care how good your therapy is, it will not make a scrap of difference. Get the body into the right mode and wonderful results appear.
Absolutely. Could not agree with that more. It's almost common knowledge. If you were to even get a massage, for example, they're not having blasting music in there. They're having nice, relaxing, try to get your body relaxed so they can really work on that muscle tissue to really help it repair. But if you're not in a relaxed state, if you're not in a repair state, the amount of benefit that you will receive from any sort of treatment will be significantly less, if not any at all. To go to vagus nerve stimulations, currently trending on a lot of social media platforms like TikTok with a bunch of devices from Sensate and Pulsetto. Is there something people are getting wrong about the vagus nerve health right now?
Yeah, look, unfortunately, social media has managed to help promote so much rubbish. It astounds me. The only real method that I've seen that works for vagus nerve stimulation, other than us, is a solution from Boston Scientific, which is an implant, right? It's an operation. They place a little box inside and they use an electrical current to stimulate the vagus nerve. Cost of that's $20,000. Runs a risk because it's an operation. And unfortunately, it is fixed. Like, you can't vary anything to improve the therapy. All the other systems out there, including Boston, do not have a monitoring function or a feedback function. And, one size doesn't fit very many people. And it's our ability to monitor and feedback in real time and do it without the patient needing to do anything is why we'll be very successful.
Absolutely. And the future of wellness definitely not even seems to be anymore, but it is shifting from that reactive to proactive care. And seeing Gabriel Health, shoot for the stars, you will be way beyond the stars. It's amazing to hear every detail from you, but I'm excited to see what the future holds for all of us as well as for Gabriel Health. Where can people find more information about Gabriel Health, about the vagus nerve stimulation, and about near infrared light therapy? And where can we even maybe buy a product?
So right now, Gabriel.health is the website, and we're populating that with lots of good information now in plain English. I'm not a fan of mumbo jumbo and all the tricks that everyone uses to make out that they're powerful and they control the world. I'm a simple engineer, and I just like to provide solutions that actually work. And so people can look at that website and they will pick up a lot of my musings that I will put on there, and sometimes quite derogatory, but that's my nature. I'm an Aussie, and we're quite irreverent when it comes to speaking our mind. When I was in Vegas at Comdex, it was quite interesting reaction from various people in across America. They'd come up and they say, "Oh, you Aussies are a bit like the Texans." And I said, "Yeah, there's one big difference. We actually deliver." And then we had the East Coasters would come along and say, "We didn't know that you invented computers in Australia." I said, "Yeah, you didn't know that we make yachts either that took the America's Cup off you guys." So it was quite interesting that the view of Australia was in those days was very primitive. Most of them don't understand that a lot of the big technical innovations in the world have actually occurred in Australia. And most people don't know that Wi-Fi is an Australian invention.
It's definitely to your point of social media, and definitely at that time, a lot of movies in the United States portraying Australia was definitely, we know Crocodile Jack, and we're thinking of very primitive people down there. So the world has definitely changed from then. And, knowing Wi-Fi, I wasn't aware Wi-Fi was created in Australia, but it's definitely, I wouldn't say the hub, but definitely a hub of innovation created in Australia as much as the rest of the world at the same time. But I will have all of the description with Gabriel Health down below in the description for everyone out there that is looking for some more information, looking to follow along Gabriel Health's journey, or even get one of these devices for yourself as well. I know they have some exciting stuff coming out. But Terry, it was a pleasure to have you on the show. We'll definitely have to do this again. I know we're going to have to dive in a little bit deeper and talk a lot more about a whole lot of other things, but thank you so much for being part of the show today.
Thank you for the opportunity.